Welcome to Season 14, Episode 3 of Sports Scene. I'm Jillian Carroll, and I'm joined today with Trace Tempesta and Eli Kleinman. We're going to talk some things basketball, so let's kick it off. Men's basketball has a game against Colorado tomorrow. They have already lost to them at home. What do you think are the chances that they pull this game off tomorrow?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So I'm going to say that the USC basketball team can absolutely rebound. I understand that they lost the previous matchup, but I want to put that first loss into context. The first time they played, it was a 10-point loss, fair enough, but it was on December 31st. That was at the beginning of the season. Evan Mobley hadn't really found his identity at the time. The chemistry with the team hadn't developed as much, and there was pretty uncharacteristic statistical features in this game that I just don't think represents who USC is today. So this loss is something that they can easily overlook, and I think they will win the next game when they play.
What statistics don't represent what we see today? Because I think there is a cause for concern for USC traveling to Colorado. Colorado had a game plan to beat USC last time. It wasn't USC's mistakes as much as it was Colorado's excellent defensive play. They really limited USC on offense, and USC only scored 4 minutes in the last 6 minutes and 59 seconds of the game after they had just cut the lead to 3. So Colorado is a dangerous team for USC because they have a game plan to beat them. They have Evan Batty. They have McKinley Wright. Those are two veteran players who cause USC a pretty young team in terms of their star player, Evan Mobley. It's going to cause them some problems.
I'll tell you what statistical features I'm talking about is in this game, USC got out-rebounded by Colorado. And the reason I'm saying that's uncharacteristic is because within the Pac-12, USC is number 1 in offensive rebounds, number 1 in defensive rebounds, and of course you combine that and they're number 1 in total rebounds. So the fact that they don't expect to be repeated simply because their track record since then has dramatically improved.
When you look at track record, I can also bring up rebounds. When you look at the rebounding battle in USC games, when they lose the rebounding battle, they lose the game. Colorado has some big men that are able to grab boards. And so if they are able to do that again, which I think they are, because like I said, the veteran presence of Colorado's players gives them more experience than someone like Evan Mobley and even the sophomore Isaiah Mobley. And if USC gets out rebounded, it usually is one of the main reasons they lose. But here's the bigger problem for USC. There is nowhere more difficult to travel to than Colorado. This season, Colorado is 8-1 at home and 6-6 on the road. And you know why they're so successful at home? Partially it's because of the elevation. It is so difficult to travel all the way up to Colorado and win in Boulder. It's a tough environment to play in. The atmosphere is tough to play in terms of the elevation. And Colorado's one of the best teams at home this season.
I think the altitude argument is fair, but it's not exactly like USC is bad on the road. They're 6-1 on the road. They have a 19-4 overall record. So this team can win in multiple ways. They don't have to be at home. And by the way, they don't also have to have just one playing style. They can have an Ethan Anderson game where he's shooting a 51% rate from three-pointers. That's the second best in the Pac-12, where he could pop off. Tosh Edey has been phenomenal recently for guard play. And then we know what they can do internally with Isaiah Mobley, Evan Mobley synergy. And this team just has too many ways to win under too many scenarios, and they have too much to play for. They're the 19th ranked team overall. They know they're going to be the target in the Pac-12. They know they're going to make the March Madness tournament. So they have a future ahead of them that's guaranteed. That's a great reason to play hard and try to improve their circumstances.
Playing hard is a term we use, but what does it actually mean? Because every team is playing hard. I've never seen a team, for the most part, especially good teams, who don't play hard. And Colorado is a good team. They are also going to play hard. More importantly, you mentioned some of the shooting statistics USC has. USC has been really inconsistent shooting this season. They have games like against Oregon in the first half where they shot 65%. But second half, they shot under 40%. It's that type of inconsistency that really worries me about this trip to Boulder.
Shooting inconsistency is expected to happen when you're looking at 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-olds, and you're saying, go be a reliable professional scorer. And okay, if you have a challenge with saying that teams play hard, how about playing disciplined? That's a great sign of a team that cares, a team that is clicking on all. Defensively, USC gives up the fewest fouls of anyone in the Pac-12. So what that tells me is this team has an identity, they know what they are defensively, and they're working together. So maybe every team plays hard. Okay, but does every team play disciplined? I think that's a different realm, and that's where USC stands out.
One other concern I have for USC, though, is that their defense, which you mentioned is one of the best in the country, has struggled besides the Oregon game as of late. Against Arizona, they gave up 81 points, which is well above their average. And against Arizona State, which was a very nice win, they gave up 71 points, which is, again, above their average. USC has only lost one game this season when they've scored 70 points, which goes to show you that they don't give up 70 points usually. And as of late, they have been giving up more points. Defense has been slightly concerning.
It also goes to show you that they don't lose very often. They're 19-4 overall, and they're hot. And yes, I understand that these last two games, they've given up more points than you would have liked to see. It's technically above average. But if the average is set at a different point, and this team can show you that they have multiple ways to win, it can be a low-scoring game where they can win. It can be a high-scoring game where they win. And it's because they can adapt to different play styles, and they know who they are. They have different ways to win. They have different contributors. I mean, we haven't even talked about guys like Drew Peterson or Chavez Goodwin or other players who really are valuable assets on this team and just make this contribution so significant where the winning record speaks for itself. They're 19-4, they're 6-1 on the road, and therefore I like their odds to improve in this game.
I have to say I agree with you there, Trace. I like their odds to win on the road. And I see, Eli, some of your points there about, traveling is difficult. And I think that's a difficult theme for any team. It doesn't matter if it's just USC or if it's just Colorado. Travel's going to be difficult. And, it's going to be a close game. I don't think either one is going to get blown out of the water by the other one. But USC has only lost, I think, 2 games since they last played Colorado. So I see some really good odds for this game tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that USC is favored, and they should be, but I am concerned as well by a potential drop-off after the Oregon game. That first half was probably USC's most impressive half of the season. They held Oregon, a really good team, an NCAA tournament team, to 22 points in the first half, but also Tajidi put up 21 himself. He almost outscored the whole Oregon team, which goes to show that they were dominant in the first half, but they weren't so dominant in the second half. They fell off a little bit. And when you talk about USC having a lot to play for, Trace, Colorado has just as much to play for. They are sliding down right now towards the bubble, and they have an NCAA tournament berth to play for, which is just as much, if not more important than potential Pac-12 championship. USC is a lock to make the NCAA tournament. Colorado is not there. A win against USC would put them right into the tournament, probably for good.
Yeah, a win over USC would do Colorado huge favors, but USC, even more than just chasing this postseason, they're chasing history. They haven't won the Pac-12 since 1985, and do you know how much it would mean to this team and to that school for them to win the Pac-12 championship? It's a mark, especially with athletic discrepancies and disappointments in the past. This would be a great way to right things and to have a positive stamp on this season, would to win the Pac-12. They've been in front all year. They're so deserving. They're 6-1 on the road. I think they are entirely capable of redeeming themselves against Colorado.
I think they certainly may be, but I also think you have to watch out for Colorado's game plan. Again, veteran guards, and when you watch Colorado play, what they are best at is steals, and just they're a long team, so their defense is one of the better defenses in the conference. And what concerns me is USC has had turnover problems in the past. They had turnover problems against Oregon, frankly, even though they dominated for most of that game. So I think that'll be the most interesting thing to watch. If they can take care of the ball, I think USC will be in a position to win. But I would watch out for turnovers as well as rebounding, because I think those are the 2 keys.
Absolutely. Well, Trace thinks USC's got it in the bag. Eli's got some concerns, and both teams definitely have a lot going for them with this game tomorrow on Thursday. But I'd like to transition a little bit and take it over to women's basketball. They have a game this Friday against rival UCLA. UCLA is ranked number 10 right now. Do you think USC can pull off the up against UCLA?
Maybe I'm ever the optimist. There's a chance that I just see these USC teams and I think they're great and I'm going to defend them. But you know what? I'm going to do it again because this women's basketball game, I think the USC team has a legitimate chance to do it. And here's why. A lot of people will point to the fact that the previous USC and UCLA matchup wasn't close. Eli, the thing is once again, that loss has to be put into context. Neither Alyssa Peely nor Shalexis Aaron played in that game. These are players, Alyssa Peely just led the team in scoring in their most recent game against Oregon, and Shalexis Aaron can give you that valuable three-point shooting that's enough to make a game a difference. So I'm very curious to hear why you don't think USC has a chance in this one, because I think these substitutions are going to be a difference maker.
Well, you previewed what I was about to say. USC has no chance. And when I mean no chance, I mean 0%. There is no way they go to Pauley Pavilion and pull off a win. And you want to mention context for that women's basketball game against UCLA early in the season? Here's some context. In the third quarter, USC put up 5 points. They didn't make a single field goal. They were all free throws. I don't know how you can overcome that with the addition of 2 players. UCLA caused problems for USC all day in that game, and they will cause the same problems again. Coach Track said something interesting after the loss to Oregon State on Friday, was that, again, USC struggled to score against zone defense. Well, that's exactly what he said after the UCLA loss, and he mentioned that they haven't gotten much better at it, which is why UCLA will go back to the same strategy and will be successful once again.
You know, there is a recipe to beat UCLA. UCLA just recently lost to Oregon State at home. And the thing is, on paper, that'd be a big question because UCLA only had 4 turnovers. So how did they lose? Well, here's where the formula comes in. Oregon State beat them in fouls and better three-point shooting percentages. Those are 2 things that Alyssa Peely and Shalexis Aaron represent. Alyssa Peely can wreak havoc in the paint. She can draw fouls, and she can be a contributor in that way. And Shalexis Aaron shoots one of the best three-point percentages in the conference. So there's a recipe to beat them, and there's an answer how USC can do it.
How can you compare Oregon State to USC? Oregon State played USC on Friday. They won by 25 points. It wasn't close.
It's not even about comparing the teams. It's just about comparing the strategies in terms of what works against UCLA.
And UCLA beat an Oregon team on Friday, which USC played on Sunday. USC got destroyed in that game as well. When you look at USC playing top competition in the Pac-12, they have struggled mightily all season. They have lost both games to Stanford by significant margins. They've lost both games to Oregon by significant margins. They've lost to UCLA badly. Arizona was the one close game they've played. They're not playing Arizona again. UCLA had no trouble beating USC the first time. And when I mentioned zone defense and USC having troubles with it, the bigger problem is UCLA has height that USC doesn't really have. Besides Angel Jackson, their center that usually comes off the bench, Alyssa Peely plays more of that center role. She is not tall enough in order to match up well with those UCLA forwards. And more importantly, USC's other biggest struggle this season has been rebounding. They got completely out-rebounded in that game against UCLA the first time. It wasn't close. I'm not sure where you see USC's path to victory in this one because they will need more than just three-point shooting and not fouling UCLA to win this game.
You know, Eli, it's not always about the size of the dog in the fight. Sometimes it's more about the size of the fight in the dog. And I think that's what you're looking at with players like Alyssa Lee and the USC identity. This team has the best free throw percentage in the Pac-12. So we saw what Oregon State did against UCLA. If they can get to the free throw line, they can win this game. They have the second best three-point percentage in the Pac-12. If they can get to their spots, which, by the way, a zone defense allows for three-point shooting. If you get the ball moving around and you can shoot from the corners, you can get three-point shots against this team. And Jordan Sanders represents that perfectly. She has the second best three-point percentage herself. She's shooting at a 45% clip. So all we need is a couple things to go right. We just need the USC rivalry to bring out the fight within them and the UCLA rivalry. And just like that, this USC team can do it.
Are you really saying that you just need a couple things to go right in order to overcome a 21-point loss the first time? I mean, seriously, it really wasn't close. If you watch that game, it was actually a bigger blowout than the 21 points would indicate. USC really never had a chance in that game, and it didn't matter shooting. It didn't matter rebounding. UCLA dominated on all levels. Two of UCLA's best players, Michaela Onyenwere and Charisma Osborne, dominated. They put up 19 points and 18 points respectively, and Natalie Chu also added 10 points, and UCLA really just had control for most of the game. USC doesn't have enough to overturn that game back in January, and most importantly, or December, and most importantly, USC is struggling as of late. They lost by 20 to Oregon State, over 20 to Oregon State. They lost by 20 to Oregon. I don't really see the tide turning for the Trojans.
I understand that they lost by 21 beforehand, but it's not like this is a regular matchup. This is the end of the season. USC knows they're on the fringe, and it's a rivalry, USC versus UCLA. And just because they lost by 21 points doesn't mean they're going to start off this game down 21. They're going to start it off 0-0. So when I said that a couple things going right could be the difference maker, I absolutely meant that. It can be a make or miss league, and USC can be a make team, and that will simply be all it takes to win. Is the percentages are on their side. If they stick to the identity of initiating contact, getting to the free throw line, and shooting threes, if that is the strategy in this game, USC can win.
It's really difficult to initiate contact and get to the free throw line when the other team is just taller than you, longer than you, and really can prevent you from passing the ball to each other. I mean, that was a huge issue in the game the first time. UCLA dominated points off turnovers. They had 21 of them. They overall dominated for most of the game. They actually had the lead the entire game. And I think that when you look at USC's women's basketball team has a very bright future. Don't get me wrong. I think their future is as bright as any team at USC right now. I said that 2 weeks ago on this show. They have a top 10 recruiting class coming in, but their time is not now, and it is not against USC on Friday.
And I just think one thing we've got to think about here, I think, Eli, you've brought up some good points with the statistics from UCLA's 21-point lead over USC last time, but Trace, you're saying all the things have to go right for USC. That means some things have to go wrong for UCLA, but this is also their last game of the season. This is also their rivalry game against USC. So it sounds like here we're either banking on everything going right for USC and things going wrong for UCLA versus things going right for UCLA and wrong for USC. And kind of based on the track record of USC's women basketball, I'm not really seeing everything going right for them and everything going wrong for UCLA.
Look, I understand that this can be an uphill battle. USC is surely not going to be favored in this matchup, but India Rogers is 4th in the Pac-12 in assists. So if she's creating and if she's finding her open shooters like Alexis Aaron Sanders, and if they're getting to their spots, this team is simply not fair to count out. UCLA is playing better at the moment, but USC still has the fight of the dog in them. So I'm not going to count them out.
It's not fair. I don't understand how you can count on India Rogers right now. She has been their best player all season, but she put up 8 points against Oregon State Friday. She put up 5 points against Oregon on Saturday. She's really struggling. She's not a player they can count on right now. And
yes, she absolutely is. She's leading the team in scoring. You have to count on that. She's your number one playmaker. You're going to count on that. And she can give you 30 on any night. We've seen her do it before.
Absolutely.
You can bank on her.
That's her career high. You're right. She did that once this season. But my point more is that when you look at her going up against UCLA's players, UCLA just has more talent. They are a better team. And I don't think we can just say it'll take a few things to go right. It's a rivalry game. UCLA is by far the better team. They're ranked number 10 in the country for a reason. They have many more quality wins than USC, and USC has struggled against the top competition in the Pac-12 all season long. So there's no trend that tells me that this game will be something different.
Well, there's a reason why the game isn't played on paper. It needs to be played in person. And that is because USC has this recipe when it comes to three-point shooting and when it comes to landing these couple features, just enough to win this game, it can still happen. So USC needs some things to go their way, but if their identity stays true to themselves, if they have India Rogers going, if they have Alyssa Peely going, and if they get to their three-point spots, this game can be an upset.
All right. Well, UCLA still ranked number 10 in the country heading into this game on Friday. We'll see if things are able to go right for USC and if they can pull off this upset victory. So we've got 2 games to watch: Thursday men's basketball, Friday women's basketball. But I think it's time to spice some things up with a hot take. Trace, I hear you have something to say about the NBA, possibly All-Stars?
That's right. So the All-Star Reserve List came out recently. There's been a lot of controversy around it, and there's one pick that I really have not been okay with. Nikola Vucevic, the former USC Trojan, got the selection over Domantas Sabonis, and I think that is a critical mistake. Vucevic did not deserve that spot, and instead I'm going to say that Domantas Sabonis did. And the main reason why is because Sabonis does more to impact winning. The Pacers have the 4th best team in the East. He's been their best player, and since when did a top 4 team in any conference not deserve All-Star representation? The Pacers have 0 All-Stars right now, when Domantas Sabonis has been giving you 21 points, 11 assists, and 11 rebounds and 5.5 assists. That tells me he's a playmaker. That tells me he is contributing offensively and defensively, and that tells me that this guy is a 24-year-old player who is having a career high in assists and points. And I think that's enough for him to make the spot over Nikola Vucevic.
You want to talk about impacting winning? That is exactly what Nikola Vucevic is doing.
Really?
Yes, the Magic are 13 and 19. But
Exactly.
Can you imagine what they would be without his presence on that team? He's averaging just under 24 points a game, almost 12 rebounds a game, and almost 4 assists a game. If you take that off the Orlando Magic, they are most likely, if not definitely, the worst team in the NBA this season. So when you look at impact, Nikola Vucevic has a bigger impact right now on the Magic than Sabonis does on the Pacers.
I don't think this is an impact award, though. And I understand what you're saying, that the Orlando Magic would be awful without Vucevic on the team. But you can't say Vucevic impacts winning when they are winning 40% of their games. They're not 500. They're not a playoff team. And quite frankly, they're not close to either of those benchmarks. Whereas Domantas Sabonis, they're an above 500 team. They're a playoff team. They're going to have home court advantage if the playoffs were to start right now. So let's talk about impact winning. Let's do that all day. One's a 4 seed, one's a 12 seed. Therefore, Domantas Sabonis deserves a spot over Nikola Vucevic.
My point is not that Vucevic is putting his team into the playoff. My point is Vucevic has more of an impact on winning because I believe the Pacers would be a better team without Sabonis, or they would have less of a drop-off without Sabonis than the Magic would have without Vucevic, which shows how important of a player he is. And, we want to talk about deserving All-Star game. I mean, statistics are a part of it. And frankly, Vucevic is putting up better statistics than Sabonis this season. So I think, not only are you disrespecting a Trojan legend, you're also really making a questionable argument because Vucevic has been the life of the Orlando Magic. And while Sabonis has been so important to the Pacers, it doesn't exactly correlate because the Pacers have other weapons on their team, while Vucevic is really a standalone star.
This isn't disrespecting a legend. This is pointing at the fact that he's been the life of a team, but the team hasn't been very lively. I mean, the simple fact that they're 12th in the standings is brutal enough. There's already arguments to be made that he's not impacting winning because the team's not winning. But I do want to say as well that it's also because the Indiana Pacers are such a great team right now. They're top 5 in assists. Domantas Sabonis is contributing to that. He's having 5.5 assists for a center as a playmaker. That's a lot to say. So I understand that he's not a flashy player. Domantas Sabonis and the Indiana Pacers aren't really described as much CTV, but Tim Duncan wasn't flashy either. So when guys produce like this and when they're having career years and when the team is winning, I don't see an argument how he doesn't make the All-Star game.
One thing I want to also mention is the Magic have been dealing with significant injury problems all season, and Vucevic has been the star that has been there for them most of the season. And it really is like those 13 wins are because of him. Only Terrence Ross and Kem Birch, as well as Dwayne Bacon, have more than 30 games played this season. And when you look at the Pacers roster, you have other players contributing significantly. You have Malcolm Brogdon, who's averaging more points than Sabonis this season. Yes, Malcolm Brogdon is scoring more points than Sabonis this season. So when we look at Sabonis being the star on his team and leading his team, he's not even the leading scorer right now. So I'm not sure you can argue that he's more deserving than a player who is by far his team's leading scorer and has played the most significant role on his team compared to Sabonis, who's not really doing that.
And I just feel like, we can argue about this spot right here, this all-star spot, but I just don't know how much trust I have in the all-star selecting committee anyway, because I'm from Atlanta. I'm a big fan of Trae Young. I think he was snubbed not being an all-star this year. And I know that's saying a lot. I know the Hawks haven't been doing the best. I know they're not the best team in the NBA, but I just don't know how much faith I have in the all-star selection committee in general. And we can argue it as much as we want, but are we the ones that are going to get to decide?
Jill, that's a fair point, and I'm going to say a stat right now, and I think it's going to infuriate you, and rightfully so, because Trae Young has a great case to make it. He's the first player in 30 years to average over 25 points and over 9 assists and not make the All-Star team. So, Jill, let me just ask you, when you hear a stat like that, and it's been 30 years since this has happened, does that just add even more fuel to your fire?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's one thing, since I'm from Atlanta, that's my team. And it's great to have a player like that from my home city that I feel like I can support even when the team's not doing well. But I mean, when you hear a stat like that, like what else are you supposed to do? I mean, it's been 30 years and just all of a sudden we're deciding to ignore things like this, ignoring the talent of some of these star players.
Yeah, certainly Trae Young has a great case to make for the All-Star game. And I think, part of the problem is potentially that Vucevic and Sabonis are both forwards compared to Trae Young being a guard. And I'm not sure if they pick reserves based on position, but if they do, obviously that holds him back. But I think Vucevic's stat line is underappreciated. Vucevic overall is one of the most underappreciated stars in the NBA. He is a star. I think that's clear.